This is your first Q&A time writing at 160 words per minute. Your proper names are Lisa Ann Murray, Cardiff Street, Palm Beach, Florida. Rachel Marks, check stand number 1, and Tom Span. Ready? Oh, yes, please. For identification, give me your full name.
Lisa Ann Murray.
And spell your last name.
Murray.
And spell your first name for the court reporter.
Lisa, Lisa.
Thank you. And your home address?
426 Cardiff Street, Palm Beach, Florida, 11226.
Do you recall an incident involving a customer by the name of Rachel Marks? The incident occurred on March 23 at around 4:41 in the afternoon in the main aisle between the lobby and the check stands as she was exiting the store.
I recall the fall, but I do not know the person's name.
She was a customer in the store?
Yes, as I recall. Although I don't know if she bought anything.
Can you describe her? Was she tall or short?
She wasn't tall. She was in between short and medium height. I would say on the shorter side, probably about 5'3", 5'4". She had a fluffy hairdo, so you can't really tell.
What was she wearing?
I believe she was wearing white pants, I think. I can't honestly tell you. It was a light colored outfit.
What about her shoes?
She was wearing white shoes. They were small, little, with about 1-inch high heels. But they weren't heel style. They were the flat bottom heel, the thick ones, thick at the top and probably not very small at the bottom. They were medium, 1/4 of an inch about in diameter.
When did you first notice the customer? When did you first see her? Do you remember in the store when you first saw her? What was she doing?
It looked like she was walking away from a check stand, but she was walking kind of almost in front of my check stand.
Was she walking toward the produce department in the front aisle or toward the liquor department?
Toward the produce department.
What direction is the produce department?
East.
So she was walking east. And if she's walking east, are you to the left of her or to the right of her as she walks by?
I was to the left of her.
In check stand number 1?
Yes, in there.
And so you saw her walking. Was she walking fast or slow or average? Do you know?
She wasn't walking fast. She was walking average. No one walks fast in the store.
What did you notice about her? What brought your eye attention to her? Why did you watch her? Do you know?
Well, she had this bag under her hands, kind of like this.
Under her left hand, the way you're holding it?
I just look up when people walk by.
And she had a bag under her hand?
Yes.
Was it rolled up or was it hanging?
It was a brown paper bag, the large size bag. It was old. It was wrinkled. And something was in it because it was rolled down. The top of the bag was rolled up and she was carrying it underneath her arm.
Was she carrying anything else in her other hand? Do you remember?
She was carrying a plastic bag in her hand, the groceries she had just purchased.
Was she walking okay? Did she look like she was in a normal gait the way she was walking? Did you notice?
Yes.
Was she trying to do anything?
Yes. It looked at the time as if she was trying to balance it, like while she was walking. She may not have had a proper grip on her items, and it looked like she was trying to balance it.
And then what happened? Do you recall?
It looked like when she was trying to balance it, she slid and she was trying to not lose her products on the ground or whatever she had. That she was trying to balance them other than trying to balance herself. She slid and she slid for a little while. She slid on her back heel and she lost her balance.
And then she fell?
She fell down on the floor.
Did you see her on the floor when she fell?
Yes, I saw her on the floor when she fell.
Did she fall flat on her back? Was she lying on her buttocks? How was she lying? Do you recall?
She landed on her butt, her backside, and she had her left leg kind of bent this way, and she had her other leg bent. She fell on her butt, and she kind of had her legs bent.
Were both bent at the knees?
Yeah, bent at the knee.
When she fell, what did you do? Did you call anybody?
I ran over there and I called to Tom Span.
This is your second Q&A time, writing at 160 words per minute. Your proper names are Mr. Smith, South Mollison Avenue, New Orleans. Apartment number 29, Larkin Pest Control, Louisiana. Tom Nolan, Bill Rouse, Paul Blake, Mr. Rouse, Christ United Methodist Church. Bill, Paul, Fred Joseph Lynn versus Dennis Johnson, Gary Press, and Mr. Press. Ready? Mr. Smith, what is your address?
3431 South Mollison Avenue, New Orleans.
How do you spell the street name?
Mollison.
Do you live in an apartment?
Apartment number 29.
What is your current occupation?
A service manager of Larkin Pest Control.
And is that here in New Orleans?
Yes, it is.
How long have you been so employed in that capacity?
6 months.
Briefly, what are your duties as a service manager?
I have 6 pest control routes that I control.
Are you licensed by the Louisiana?
Yes, I am.
What licenses do you hold and how long have you held them?
I hold a branch 2 and 3 field representatives license. My branch 2 I've had for approximately 10 years. My branch 3 for approximately 4 years.
How long have you worked in the structural pest control business?
About 17 years.
Were you at one time or other employed by Tom Nolan, the respondent in this case?
Yes.
In what capacity were you employed by Tom Nolan?
Several different capacities. I started off as a termite inspector. From there, I went into supervision pest control. From there, I went to branch manager for approximately 3 months.
Approximately when to when were you employed by Tom Nolan?
I'm not too clear on the dates, probably 2.5 years.
Do you recall the approximate time when you left the employ of Tom Nolan?
I believe mid-April.
Of last year?
That's correct.
And you worked at Tom Nolan's approximately 2.5 years prior to April?
Yes.
Who were your supervisors at Tom Nolan's?
Let's see. Bill Rouse and Paul Blake.
Could you spell Mr. Rouse's last name?
I could not spell that. Well, let me try. Rouse, I think.
Thank you. While you were employed at Tom Nolan's, did you have occasion to work on a job at the Christ United Methodist Church on March 12?
Yes.
Who instructed you to go to that church?
I don't totally remember too clearly. It was either Bill or Paul.
Did you work on that job any other days other than the one day, which was March 12th?
No, that was the only day I worked there.
Do you recall what day of the week that was?
No, I don't.
Prior to your going to the church on March 12th, do you recall a discussion between yourself and one of your senior supervisors regarding the agreement between the church, Christ United Methodist Church, and Tom Nolan, your employer?
I don't recall that.
To your knowledge, was Tom Nolan in a contract with the church to provide termite control services?
Yes.
Do you recall how you had found out about this agreement?
No. I was just aware that they had one with them.
Do you recall giving a deposition in the case of Fred Joseph Lynn versus Dennis Johnson regarding this incident at the church?
Yes, I do.
And you were sworn to tell the truth under penalty of perjury during that deposition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And after you gave that deposition, were you provided with a copy of that deposition?
Yes, I was.
And did you have a chance to go over it and look at the transcript of your deposition?
Very briefly.
Mr. Smith, I'm directing your attention to page 24 of your deposition, line 21, and through the next page, page 25 through line 23, which is almost the whole page. Just read it to yourself and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Okay, I read it.
And also read the top of page 26, lines 1 through 5. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
Having read those portions of your deposition, does that refresh your recollection as to whether there was a discussion? Strike that. Does that refresh your recollection as to whether you were told about an agreement between the church and Tom Nolan?
Yes, it does.
What were you told in that regard?
Prior to doing the service in the church, I was told approximately 2 weeks prior to that I was going to be doing their service agreement. We were going to be doing some work on the church.
Who was we?
Gary Press and myself.
Was Gary Press at the time an employee of Tom Nolan at that time also?
Yes,
And do you recall who was present during this discussion?
myself and Paul and Bill. I don't remember who was in charge of it.
So one of your supervisors, right?
Right.
Was Mr. Press there?
I don't recall if he was or not.
I'd like to direct your attention to page 26 of your deposition. The remainder of this is your first Q&A time writing at 140 words per minute. Your proper names are Larry Phillips, Victoria, Canada, Canadian, Disneyland, Safeway, Fullerton College, Fullerton JC, Anaheim, Matt Schools, Ball Road, RCA Corporation, RCA, Alton Street, Bob Walters, Corona, and Riverside. Ready? Would you state your full name, please?
Larry Phillips.
Have you ever had your deposition taken before?
No.
Were you here for most of your wife's deposition?
Yes.
Did you hear the little speech that I gave her in the beginning?
Yes.
Did you understand everything that I told her?
Yes.
Did you have any questions about anything that I told her?
No.
Do you see any need for me to repeat everything that I told her?
No.
Let me emphasize a couple of things to make sure you understand our questions, just so that we're all talking about the same thing here, okay?
Okay.
Let me start off with some background information on you. What is your date of birth?
5/1968.
Where were you born?
In Victoria, Canada.
How old are you at the present time?
40.
Do you have dual citizenship?
No.
U.S. citizenship?
No.
Canadian?
Canadian citizen, permanent resident.
Where are you presently employed?
At Disneyland.
How long have you been with Disneyland?
About 7 years.
What do you do for them?
I am a sound technician.
Is that a full-time job?
Yes.
Monday through Friday?
Sunday through Wednesday, 10-hour days, a 4-day work week.
What are your hours at the present time?
I start at 5 in the morning and I work until 3:30.
What were your hours at the time of your wife's incident at Safeway?
At that time, I was working on second shift, I believe, to the best of my knowledge.
What do those hours and dates consist of?
That was from 3:30 in the afternoon until 2:30 in the morning.
How long had you been working on second shift?
About a year.
Roughly, when was it that you switched over from second shift to the shift that you are on presently?
I believe that was 2 years ago.
Do you recall the month or time of year offhand?
No, not offhand.
In terms of educational background, did you go to college?
Yes.
Where did you go to school?
Fullerton College.
When did you go there?
I went there part-time for quite a few years.
Did you receive any type of certificate or degree from Fullerton JC?
No.
What types of classes did you take there?
I started out in industrial arts, and then I changed over to electronics. And then I went from Fullerton College. Then I went into a private school in Anaheim.
What was that called?
Matt's Schools. They are located on Ball Road, and I received a certificate in electronics engineering.
Is that similar to a college degree? Do you know?
No, it is not.
Just a certificate then? Is that right?
That's right.
For how long did you go to MAT schools?
6 months.
And were you working at that time?
No.
After having taken classes at MAT schools, have you had any other further education or training?
Yeah. When I worked for RCA Corporation, I went through a lot of their training courses.
When you left RCA, did you go directly to Disneyland?
No.
Where did you go after that? Do you recall?
I was self-employed for a while. I did electrical work and some construction before I went over to Disneyland.
For how long were you self-employed?
I believe it was about 9 months.
Where were you living at that time?
On Alton Street.
Is that your present address?
Yes.
When you were self-employed, did you work out of the house?
No. I worked out of a friend's house.
Who was the friend?
His name is Bob Walters.
Does he live in Corona?
Yes, he does.
And after that 9 months or so that you were self-employed, did you then go to Disneyland?
Yes.
You have been with Disneyland ever since?
Yes.
Since you have been with Disneyland, have you had any other employment of any kind?
For a while, I had a part-time job working on my days off for an independent video shop in Riverside.
When did that take place?
Gosh, I can't even remember the year. I would have to estimate.
Well, roughly. This is your second Q&A time writing at 160 words per minute. Your proper names are Mr. Smith, South Mollison Avenue, New Orleans, apartment number 29, Larkin Pest Control, Louisiana, Tom Nolan, Bill Rouse, Paul Blake, Mr. Rouse. Didn't I just give that list?
No, it's this one.
Oh.
We're in 140, number 2.
Oh. Correction. This is your, I was reading this and then I thought the name sounded familiar. I apologize. This is your second Q&A time writing at 140 words per minute. Your proper names are Mr. Grams, Solitaire, Irvine, Southern California, Salt Lake City, Mr. Grams, Ramon Hernandez, and Mr. Hernandez. Ready? I don't anticipate this deposition taking that long. However, if at any time during this deposition you would like to take a break for any reason at all, please let me know and I'll be happy to accommodate you along those lines as well. All right?
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Grams, what is your current residence address?
137 Solitaire.
Please spell Solitaire.
Solitaire.
And what city is that in?
Irvine.
Zip code?
92720.
And what is your telephone number?
651-4669.
And how long have you been residing at this address on Solitaire?
Approximately 11 years.
And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Are you currently married?
Yes.
Do you have any children?
4 children.
Are you planning to leave the Southern California area at any time within the next couple of weeks?
A vacation is scheduled for the end of, what month is this? I'm trying to think. The last 2 weeks in October or the last 3 weeks in September, and the first week in August is when I have scheduled for a vacation.
Would that be the last 3 weeks in September and the first week in October, or is it the last week in August and the first 3 weeks in September?
Do you have a calendar? I could better come up with it if I look at a calendar. Here it is. The 19th of August and the 26th of August and the week of the 23rd of September.
Where are you going to be going on vacation during the last week of September?
That's my father-in-law's birthday, and we were going to Salt Lake City.
Mr. Grams, what is your current occupation?
Diesel mechanic.
And how long have you been doing this type of work?
21 years.
Can you recall doing any type of mechanic work for a gentleman by the name of Ramon Hernandez?
Yes.
When did you first start working for Mr. Hernandez? Do you recall?
I believe it was around June or July.
When you first started working for Mr. Hernandez in June or July, how often did you work for him?
It was occasionally on weekends, and it started with an engine that he had that was down that he couldn't find the problem with. And I went and found the problem and repaired the engine. And then he called me every couple of weeks to come and work on his equipment. And it was mainly on the weekends. That is what I recall.
And that started approximately in June or July. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And during the remaining portions of the year, that being August through December, did you also work for Mr. Hernandez during that time?
Yes, I did.
And how frequently during that period of time would you work for Mr. Hernandez?
Probably about the same amount of time. It was just on the weekends.
Did you have any type of written contract with Mr. Hernandez to do this work for him?
No, I had no contract. I didn't think of that.
How much did he pay you to do the mechanic work for him?
$40 an hour.
And are you still working for Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
And are you still earning $40 per hour?
Yes.
Did you work for Mr. Hernandez during the following year?
Yes.
How frequently during the following year, in any given month, would you work for Mr. Hernandez?
Just like every once a week, usually on Sunday. Yeah, as I recall, it was usually Sundays.
So for the months of January through December, you would work approximately 4 days per month.
Yes, sir.
And each day that you worked, how many hours per day would you work generally?
It probably averages out to about 4 to 5 hours. It was never more than 5 or 6 hours.
So based upon the 4 to 5 hours that you worked on the average for Mr. Hernandez, that would equate to approximately 20 hours per month.
Yes, that's right.
How many different trucks would you work on for